Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to our September membership luncheon. My name is Andrea Kaikala. I'm the Executive Director of the Kent Chamber of Commerce. All right, it is now my pleasure to introduce our MC for the event, our Government Affairs Chair, Shelley Cook with Kelly Services. Shelley has been on the Board of Directors for 4 years and has served as the Chair of Government Affairs for 3. Please help me in welcoming Shelley Cook, our MC for the afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming to the State Election Debate Luncheon. As you know, the Kent Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs team has been very busy this year with lots of issues. We invite all members of our chamber to be part of the Government Affairs Committee and to get involved within your local community. Our committee meets on the second Tuesday of the month at noon at the local chamber office. We need your input in order to correctly represent the business environment here in Kent. Now for our debate. Each candidate will be given 30 seconds to answer each question. Charlotte ran downstairs, but she'll be right back. She will be holding up time cards. When you see the yellow 10-second time card, you have 10 seconds left to wrap up your questions. When you see the red card, you're out of time. Don't make her stand up and get violent. Each candidate will have a 1-minute closing statement at the end, and if we have time, we will take questions from the audience. Before starting our debate today, I'd like to ask Representative Up the Grove to please stand up. That's you. Yay. Okay. I wanted to point out Representative Up the Grove today as he is running for a re-election but does not have a challenger. He will be here for after lunch and the debate to answer any questions that you may have of him. Okay, so thank you, candidates, for getting started. We're going to ask everybody the same question to begin with. Introduce yourself and why you're running. So we'll start down here. And you'll have to share the microphones too. It should be on.
Is it on?
Yep,
it is on.
It's on.
It's a half a minute already gone.
I know. Time's up.
My name is Bud Sizemore. I'm a 19-year veteran of the Kent Fire Department. I've served this community all over the 8 stations throughout the city of Kent and Covington, as well as the district around. I also served 4 years on the Covington City Council. Really enjoyed that work, that opportunity to find another way to serve. I'm asking for your support to be your representative, and I will go down to Olympia and work very hard for middle-class families.
Hi, I'm Mark Hargrove, the current state representative in the 47th, position 1. When I first decided to run, it was because, honestly, I had a deep love for my neighbors, and I did not feel that they were being represented properly, and I felt I could do a better job. Now that I'm in Olympia, I see more specifically the problems that we have. We have a broken legislative system, and I have specific ways that we can make that a better process. The budgeting process follows along with that, and that ties into jobs that our neighbors need, and those things can all be fixed by solutions that I have to offer.
Thank you.
Hello? We're there. Hi, my name is Andy Masagli, and for those of you who have seen the signs around, you said, oh, that's how he says it. Yes, it's Masagli is how I pronounce that. And I'm running for position 2 in the 47th district, and I come from a background, a variety of background. I've been a business owner. I've owned several different businesses, and I've heard many of your stories, and I understand exactly where you're at. I've also had the opportunity to serve in the U.S. Army and also as a deputy sheriff. So I've seen the public side of service as well. I'm anxious to use all of that insight in Olympia. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Pat Sullivan. I've been involved in this community for over 20 years, serving as a mayor, chair of an economic development council, as a youth sports coach, as a PTA president, and I ran for the legislature 10 years ago. Lost by 90 votes the first time I ran, but I wanted to serve in the legislature to improve the way things were working, and won the second time I ran. I'm currently serving as House Majority Leader, and would really appreciate going back for another term to work on the things that we all care about.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, I'm Tina Orwell, and I've had the honor of serving in Olympia and representing this wonderful community. I'm just finishing my second term. One of the things I'm very passionate about is education. I want to make sure we don't leave any kids behind and that our kids are really getting the skills they need to compete for local jobs. And so that's something that I've tried to roll up my sleeves and work on, as well as other issues faced by our community. So it would be an incredible honor to go back and keep working on behalf of our community. Thank you.
I'm William Bench. I'm a father of two. I'm a homeowner, and I feel that what all ties us all together is economics, or sound money. And so I'm looking at the value of our dollar today from what it was in 1913 is about 3 cents. So we're all feeling the pinch, and I want to approach a sound budget that we can actually work with. And I also want to work with each community. My attempt is to reach out to...
Time's up. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zach Hudgens. I'm the state representative from the 11th Legislative District, which after redistricting now comes into a major portion of Kent for the first time. The district goes all the way from Seattle all the way down here. I'm in my 5th term, and I'm running for a 6th term. I was first elected in 2002, and we had tough budget times, and that's why I ran, is to focus on job creation, I'll focus on sustainable budgets. And although we're not all the way there, we're working that way, and I would really appreciate your support in going back to Olympia to continue that work and balancing our budgets and pushing for a sustainable economy here in Washington. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, our first question, or our second question, will go to Tina and Will. We have a myriad of transportation projects and maintenance needs that need to be completed on our roads. What is your highest priority in transportation projects, and how do you propose we fund these? Well, you can go first, and she went first.
Well, looking at our magnificent Constitution that we have, we know in the 10th Amendment it directs that these sort of issues were to be assigned to those who have positive rights. It would be we the people, and where we don't have that power, we would look toward the state and the state treasury. So I'm going to certainly respect that. I think that there's much that we can do, and I think there are a lot of ideas that we should present and be open to. So I certainly would want to utilize any strategy that might be forthcoming, and I'll be open to that as well. And I would certainly want to fund the sort of road maintenance and programs. So really, I think it is about, where I come from, is about innovative ideas. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
The movement of goods and people is critical to our area, and so this is a big issue that we need to take on. And I think about 167 and 405, and how do we make that interchange work? How do we get goods off, from 509 moving all the way through to the Kent Valley? And so we have a lot of big projects. I'm proud of our area, though, because I think there's been good teamwork with the Chamber and others to really move forward an agenda on transportation. Funding it is going to be some challenges. I know there's a committee looking at this, and we need to put all the ideas on the table and figure this out and move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, question 3 is for Mark Hargrove and Bud Sizemore. The local governments and businesses are being asked to deal with a new and costly permit requirement for managing storm water. We understand the local environmental imperative, who wrote this? Associated with stormwater, but local governments and businesses continue to be financially constrained as we work to climb out of the recession economy. Are you willing to work with us and vote for reasonable timelines and phasing of these requirements to make them more feasible and achievable? So, Mark, if you'd like to go first.
Thank you. I'm an assistant ranking member on the House Transportation Committee, and so the subject has come up in committee and of course on the House floor. So it's a serious issue. I think that we do need to keep in mind as we look at, we do need to preserve our environment, and of course this is an issue pertaining to that. But we do have to consider how it impacts jobs and the economy and so on. And so there does need to be some balance there. And I think maybe we occasionally stray too far in one direction or the other. So absolutely, I'm happy to consider those things, to consider timelines and so on, to make things so that we don't kill our economy.
Great, thank you.
When I was on the Covington City Council, we began working on issues of surface water management back in 2005, and we laid out a plan that made steady investments so that there weren't large increases over each or kind of a surprise bill in the mail. I think that those investments are critical to ensure that our environment is preserved, because you cannot get it back, and it's much more expensive to get it back if you don't take those things out front. Working on timelines with the Chamber of not only Kent, but Auburn, Covington as well, I think that those are critical to be able to come to solutions.
Thank you. Question 4. The question again is for our transportation. This is for you? Yes. Sorry. The question is again on transportation. Having a myriad of transportation projects and maintenance needs to be completed on our roads. What is your highest priority in transportation projects, and how would you fund them? Pat, you can go first.
Well, we definitely need to prioritize valuable transportation dollars, and I would do it in 2 areas: projects that lead to greater safety and projects which lead to greater economic development. Here in South Kent County, we know that this is an economic engine for the state, and that when you look at 405, when you look at 167, without additional capacity on those highways, we're not going to be successful in allowing for expansion of current businesses and bringing new businesses into this community. And so I would focus primarily in those areas to ensure that economic development occurs here in the state, which brings in additional revenue for other projects as well.
I have a degree in transportation, and this is it's an interesting thing about this valley because we actually produce more tax revenue than Seattle does for the state. And 167 is a big part of that. I think expansion 167, the growth to allow it to connect directly to the Port of Tacoma will allow businesses to come and have access that they need logistically to grow this valley, which is really where the economic growth is going to come from. If we were to get back into a zone of business growth, it's going to happen in this valley. It's not going to happen in the metro areas. So 167.
Thank you. And Zach, your next question. Both candidates for governor have stated education, preschool, and K-12 fully funding in Washington are top priorities for them. Yet the current state revenue picture continues to be problematic in achieving this goal, as mandated under the McCleary decision of the state Supreme Court. How would you proceed to fund education level mandated by McCleary and planned timeline laid out by the legislature under previously passed legislation?
In 30 seconds or less?
Yes.
Wow. Where do I start? Education is our paramount duty. It is a top priority. As one of the budget chairs, I oversee the General Government Appropriations and Oversight Committee. We push for a sustainable, balanced budget that did not cut education or human services this last time. I think if you look forward, it's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen, but we will continue to prioritize education. We will probably have to do that within a realm of no new taxes, as a 2/3 requirement continues to be fought out. And what that means is we're going to have to cut other things. It's very similar to what we've done in the past. It's a much bigger thing, but I get 30 seconds, so.
I know. You did good.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay. Mark and Bud, this question's for you. Okay, again, you get the transportation question. Everyone gets that today. That is part of our platform for this year. So what is your highest priority in transportation projects, and how would you propose to fund them?
In addition to the projects 167, 405 that Representative Sullivan laid out, I believe that 509, completing that project, allowing goods to travel easier on our roads is going to be critical to sustainability. We need to be able to move people and goods. Public safety is definitely a very important aspect, and I've dealt with those issues. So any place we can create a greater public safety in our transportation system, we need to it. But we need an all approach, an all broad approach in order to get those people and the goods to market.
Well, not only do we need to get rid of the frustration of getting stuck in traffic and burning fuel and polluting and so on, but we need to connect our ports to our warehouses and to points east, and our economy really depends on that. It's so important, and that we are right in the center of what's important to our state transportation-wise. On 167 or 405, the worst interchange in the state. So we need to make those things happen. Now, how to pay for those is the big issue. And I am focused on keeping the costs down. The bridge over Jenkins Creek that we're widening from 2 lanes to 5 is going to cost $12 million, which is ridiculous. Just widening a bridge over a creek. We can do things like, for example, we gave an exemption to the new floating bridge, an exemption from the Shoreline Management Act, saving $127 million. That's the kind of savings we can do all over the state.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, question is for you, Tina and Will. When the budget problems arise, what is the last program you will cut? And furthermore, do you favor across-the-board cuts, or would you rather eliminate entire departments?
Thank you. We've had to make a series of hard decisions. For me, public safety and protecting those that are most vulnerable are a top priority after education. And so my thing is, you know, we have to fund our education so our kids have a future, but at the same time, protect those that might not be able to care for themselves and not compromise the safety in our communities.
My answer would mirror Representative Orwell's. We do have those who are underrepresented, who are not able or capable of representing themselves. I think in Representative Orwell's neighborhood, they've seen this matter of those who have mental illness come to the fore, and they have they're attempting to deal with it. They had some contracting was dealing with it, but again, it's a lot of issues that have to be resolved, and we need to address these things. They're not necessarily comfortable for us to do, but I think that the most vulnerable are the last ones I would cut.
Thank you. Pat and Andy, it's your turn. This question regards economic development. We have had the innovative leadership in the past for our city that has brought us Kent Station and Shower Center. What is your economic vision for the state?
Well, it starts with reform. You know, when my grandfather first ran the restaurant at the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, the produce guy came to him and said, you know, you're going to buy our produce. It's going to cost this much. And if you don't buy our produce, some unpleasant things are going to happen to you. And in Washington, we call that L&I insurance. That's how that's sold. And that's exactly how it works. And we really need to look at what will attract business to Washington and not keep it away. That's number one.
Thank you very much. You know, I'm proud of the effort that I've made with the business community, both locally and at the state level. You know, I've received the highest rating from the Auburn Chamber of Commerce for my effort there. I passed legislation that helped actually allow this building to be built. And it's those efforts, working collaboratively, that'll help build this economy. No question about it. You hear all about the Boeings of the world, the Microsofts of the world, but we know where the jobs are created are here in the local community. And so I look forward over these next 2 years to look at workers' comp, look at unemployment insurance, as we've had in the past, reduce the cost for business and regulation in order to ensure that you're successful right here in this community.
Thank you. And Zach, how do you propose to incentivize businesses to stay in Washington?
Washington is a great place to work, it's a great place to live, it's a great place to do business. And part of that is our quality of life. It means protecting our environment, it means having lots of opportunities, it means investments in education. We need to do all of those things. And so it means balancing out how much we put into the Puget Sound so that we can make sure that we keep businesses here, so that they want to locate here, so that there's this entrepreneurial spirit to continue to create business, but also that education is working, that we're funding education, and so that we have a good workforce, a strong workforce. That's why we have a diverse economy now compared to, say, 50 years ago, where it was all natural resources. Now we've got Microsoft, we've got Boeing, we've got other spin-offs from those companies. So we need to do all of those things in order to help us move forward.
Good. Thank you. Okay, we're going to start down here again. You get the education question. Hopefully no tongue twisters this time. Both candidates for governor have stated that education, preschool, and K-12 fully funding in Washington are top priorities. Yet the current state revenue picture continues to be problematic in achieving this goal as mandated under the McCleary decision of the state Supreme Court. How would you proceed to fund education at the level mandated by the McCleary decision, the planned timeline laid out by the legislature under previously passed legislation?
Boy, I had 12 thoughts. I just raced through my head there. The first thing that we need to do, as we recognize, we all know that education is a paramount duty. If it's the paramount duty, it should be funded first. I was a co-sponsor of that bill, that we would fund education first as a separate bill, put it aside, and then we move on to other things of lower priority. If we do that, then every decision about education is a conscious decision. We don't find ourselves in the situation of, oh, we would have liked to have done more for education, we just ran out of money. So it's a conscious decision. So and I know there are arguments that, oh, we don't want to have our hands tied, but I just hate the idea, and I know you guys do too, where we have the situation where we say we need a tax increase for public safety and education because we need to have other priorities.
Thank you.
Each of you should be looking up at this table, and the thought that should cross your mind is, don't tell me your priorities, show me your budget. When education funding was brought to bear in the McCleary decision, it became abundantly clear that we don't have enough money coming directly down into the classroom. So funding education first is a slogan, while supporting a budget that cuts full-day kindergarten and diminishes the budget to education. Those two things don't match up. Ask to see the budget, look at the votes for education, and that will tell you what people's priorities are.
Thank you. Pat and Andy, how would you incentivize businesses to stay in Washington State?
Well, first and foremost, 2 years ago, we passed a significant unemployment insurance reform, workers' comp reform. Unfortunately, with the workers' comp reform, the agency's fiscal note savings didn't accrue to the level that we had hoped. And so we're going to have to go back and look at both of those issues, I think, in the next session. But one issue that I really think has to happen here, we've danced around it at the state level, is tax increment financing, which allows local governments to build infrastructure necessary for businesses to locate here. It worked in Auburn in their downtown redevelopment with their LIFT project. It can work in communities across this area and around the state.
Well, the reform that Representative Sullivan just mentioned still netted us the highest workers' compensation costs in the country, and we need to fix that stat. The thing is, if you want businesses to come here, don't tax them to death. Don't require more of them in regulation than anywhere else. Be reasonable, allow businesses to grow, and understand what it is that they need to do. That's why it takes business experience today in the legislature to get business back into Washington.
Great, thank you. Okay. Our education question. Do you want me to read the whole thing again, or do you got it? Okay.
In corporations, they address problems if they're not getting the solutions that they need. They address the management, and what often they've done is what's called peak efficiencies, and they implement a process improvement. And M. Peter Scontrino of Scontrino Powell Organizational Psychology addressed a conference held for Washington cities, and he said, if you're not engaged in an active process improvement program, 50% of your budget is going up in smoke. So could you imagine if we could have 50% more funds for education than we currently have? And my time is up.
Thank you. It goes very fast.
Yes, education is our paramount duty, and we do need to move forward on this. I think a lot needs to go on the table. I do agree with looking at new growth, which is probably going to be very slow coming, but maybe linking part of it to education and figuring out how we streamline government and other things. We do need to put this as a top priority as we move forward. And I would say it's not only early learning in K-12, but also higher ed.
Thank you. Okay, this is for you. Local governments and businesses are being asked to deal with new and costly permit requirements for managing stormwater. We understand the environmental imperatives associated with stormwater, but local governments and businesses continually to be financially constrained as we work to climb out of the recessive economy. Are you willing to work with us and vote for reasonable timelines, phasing of these requirements to make them more feasible and achievable?
Absolutely want to work with you, absolutely want to be reasonable. We need to find a good balance between protecting the environment and job creation, but I don't think that it's one or the other. Protecting the environment is job creation. Companies want to stay here because it's a nice place to live. They want to stay here and have a good workforce because it's a nice place to live. And that means that we need to deal with environmental problems. The Duwamish area is in my district. It's over $2 billion of the payroll, 200,000 vehicle trips a year, and we need to clean up the Duwamish. Not because it's a good thing to do or because we love the sea otters, it's because that's where people are going to come to create jobs. This is going to also impact the investments we're making in the Puget Sound and the Puget Sound Partnership. You don't want to pay one way or the other. You want to pay once, get it cleaned up, and attract those folks to our area. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're back down here again. You guys are doing great. How would you incentivize businesses to stay in Washington State?
I think that we have a real issue with B&O tax. Both, I know certainly locally here, there's, I believe there's been just a little bit of scuttlebutt about B&O tax. But regardless of whether your local government has a B&O tax, you have a state B&O tax. It's an unfair system. It's really a nonsensical system, I believe, designed to meet some constitutional muster. Repeal and replace, I think, is the way that we take a look at that and find ways to properly share the load of corporate tax.
I agree wholeheartedly. The B&O tax is one of the problems. We can also reform workers' comp. There are ways to, we can offer private alternatives, lump sum settlements. We took a small step in that direction, but we can do more. Tort reform, so people aren't afraid to hire people, and I have specific stories where people get fired for and end up suing their employer, and it kills small business. Health insurance, we can bring down the cost of health insurance, part of that by tort reform also, to protect the doctors from excessive premiums and so on. So there are a slew of things that we can do, and if you add up about 5 different steps, we can make this place a good place for business.
Thank you very much. Looks like we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Does anybody have a question that they'd like to ask?
Not so.
Yes. Oh, Suzette. Hi, good afternoon.
Why not? Suzette Cook, Mayor for the City of Kent. Since clearly we talk about revenues or you don't answer where the revenue's coming from. And we've just talked a bit about the business and occupation tax. We are limited by what tools you as a state legislator will have to fund programs, just as cities are also limited with those tools. So what would you do on a consistent revenue source? What would you look at the state level for a revenue source to fund education and for those in need and transportation? What different resource would you call upon?
Okay, we'll start down here and go all the way down.
Oh, you want to start this end?
Yeah, we'll just start right there with Mr. Sizemore, and we'll just go all the way down, please.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, working in local government, serving on Covington City Council for 4 years, being Mayor Pro Tem for 2 years, the mayor, I think if it was solved, somebody would have already done it. I think that it's going to take an adult conversation about where we are. We can't have empty rhetoric about some of the slogans. I think we need to actually talk about the fact that, as a percentage of personal income, our revenues to local and state government are less than they were 10 years ago.
Time's up. Thank you.
Well, we kind of touched on this a little bit before, that we have a free market capitalist system that served us well in our country, and it generates what we need to get our economy going. We need to do more. Well-meaning people have tinkered with that and trying to solve problems, and we've kind of messed up the system. If we go back to protecting small business, reducing unnecessary regulation, and like I talked about, tort reform, L&I, those kinds of things, we get the businesses going, the economy gets moving, that creates more revenue.
I mean, I agree. A steady stream of growth via business is a steady stream of revenue. And I think that by taxing more, you know, the B&O tax credit is something that not only the only place in the nation, but possibly in the free world, we're the only people who tax on revenue and not on profit. And I think that there are ways to reform that and still have revenue, but it comes from growth. I think we need to start the conversation with how can we spend less, not how can we get more. The government is not a business. It is not a for-profit business, and it should not be a for-profit business. We need to think about how can we get more money into business people's hands, and then you'll see what you want.
Well, certainly economic growth is part of any solution to our revenue issues. But at the local level, Madam Mayor, any suggestions that you have, I would love to hear. At the state level, it's all about funding our settlement under McCleary. And it's a difficult task. I mean, there are lots of ideas floating around. I serve on a joint task force with Senator Fain to look at the variety of options to help solve that problem. But I can tell you, unless there's a bipartisan approach to solving this problem, and our kids deserve it, that we're not going to get to that point. And so it's going to take all of us working together, the business community, labor, everyone, Republicans, Democrats, to solve this problem.
Thank you.
Well, I agree with a lot that's been said. I think the hard conversation over the last few years has been around taxes. I'm a strong supporter of looking at the B&O. I think it's a problem, but I think there needs to be a group to look at everything. I don't want to see layers of taxes or changes that don't consider other what the impact is. And so I do think it's the business community helping us, both small and big business, as we move forward. Between transportation, education, this is all we're going to be talking about going into the next session, and so we do need feedback. And I think we need to move forward and put all options on the table.
I think monetary empowerment would come through. Well, if you ask this question of Andrew Jackson, he would tell you that it's all keyed into banking and the value of money, and he resisted a form of reserve banking. Fractional reserve banking. So we have an option. Again, many of the good ideas are coming from the people up, not from the top down, we might notice. So a full reserve banking option could be there and is available. Not all of us are familiar with that, but we can pursue these innovations and more value for the money that we hold in our state bank, for instance. Some have suggested that, although it's a fractional reserve system. And my time is up.
Thank you.
Suzette, great question on what's a specific answer. I don't think there is a specific answer. I think that there are a couple of things going on, though. And the first one is that we have to keep our house in order. And that means continuing to do the cuts that we've done. We've let over 1,500 people go out of the state. We continue to manage towards better technologies, more efficiencies, and cutting those jobs back. The second thing is we need to target our taxes so that when we put a tax out in front of the people or when we try and pass one in the legislature, people know what they're getting specifically. You can see that in the 2 transportation packages that passed in the last 10 years. You can see that in the way we've taxed discretionary things like soda pop or candy with provisions in there protecting jobs. So you get a job credit if you have a candy maker in the state, like Seattle Chocolates is in my district, Almond Roca, apples and cotlets. So that's the tax policy you've seen us do, and I think that we'll continue to do that if we need to.
Okay. Thank you. It's unfortunately that's our last question. Sorry. At this time, we would like to thank all of our candidates and give them a 1-minute closing remark, and we'll start with Mr. Hudgens here. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you very much for having me today. I'm a member of the Renton Chamber of Commerce, and I haven't been down this far to your Chamber of Commerce meeting. My wife and her family come from small business owners, 35 years of business running a small restaurant and a small glass shop in the Seattle Center. I know the problems that face you every single day as small business owners. We keep those in mind in Olympia because you're the people we talk to the most. We don't talk to the Microsofts and the Boeings nearly as much as we talk to our community members every single day. I'd love to get your support for re-election. I'd love to keep managing our budget in a balanced, sustainable way that promotes economic development across the state and especially in our region that drives the state's economy. Every Apple, every piece of software, every airplane comes through my district, and so I know the jobs that are impacted in that. And I'd love to get your support. My name is Zach Hudgens. I'm running for re-election in the 11th Legislative District. Thank you.
Hi, my concept of government ties into how I can make prosperity with you by helping you to realize the empowerment that you have by exercising ideas that have kind of been left by the wayside. Remember, we talked about that our dollar is worth 3 cents and declining quickly from the dollar that it was. But what that means is that sometime in the near future, if we don't change course, and then we're going to be facing something called hyperinflation. We don't want that to happen. It's going to affect your businesses first. The key is to understand that positive liberty can be exercised by us and as members of this state and our city. And so I want to empower you by helping you to limit the regulations that we have on a federal level. We have a wonderful federal system that is there to exercise the enumerated powers and to protect us from our civil rights. And I'm out of time again.
Thank you.
Well, it's an incredible honor to serve in Olympia, and I really see that I'm part of a team, and I'm really proud that we work across all levels of government and with our business community to really work on issues that matter. Whether over the years, we've worked on Hansen Dam and levies, we worked on annexation and streamlined taxes, and foreclosure. And I want to continue to roll up my sleeves with the community and work on things that you care about and would love your support. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much to the Kent Chamber of Commerce for putting this event together. I know it takes a great deal of work, and so thanks for allowing us this opportunity today. I'm proud of my 8 years in the legislature. I've worked hard on economic development, on education reform, working in a bipartisan way to achieve what the Supreme Court called promising reform in the area of education, working with community leaders, with business organizations both here and in Auburn and in Covington that brought direct jobs into the community and new projects. Would love the opportunity to serve again another 2 years. I've been endorsed by a wide variety of individuals and organizations. Mayor Cook, former state representative and current Federal Mayor Skip Priest, Auditor Brian Sontag endorsed me for my efforts around reform and would appreciate your support as well.
You know, I used to own a flight training business, and I could take students and teach them to fly around the pattern, do their little rectangle pattern, go take off, come down, come back down, around and around they'd go, and they would get very proficient at this. And you'd want them to be very proficient at this so that they would have these basic skills when it's time to move on forward. But when it came time to go from point A to point B and fly that plane across country, it took a completely different skill set. And as masterful as they were at that flight pattern around the field, they were not ready to move it. It's a different skill set. And I appreciate Pat's willingness to serve over the last 8 years. It's a long time he's put in, and I think he's become masterful at flying around the pattern, but we're at a different time now, and we need to move from point A to point B. It's going to take a different perspective and a different skill set, and that's what I bring. I'm Andy Masagli, and I'm with the 47th District.
When I first showed up at Olympia, it really is an honor. You look around that big building and you go, wow, this is pretty cool. So I came down there with a freshman class, 10 Republicans, 10 Democrats, and we had resolved that we were going to be open, transparent. We were going to make things different when we got down there. And when we discovered was that the system is broken. So that when we were ready for the bipartisan open discussion, no, we separated Republicans in one room, Democrats in the other. We made all our decisions there. Then we came out and we voted, but the issue was already settled. We only vote on bills that the majority has already determined are going to pass. That's a flawed system, but we can fix that. And there are, I have a couple, again, I don't have time, but there are a couple of specific ways that we can make that fixed. And again, I don't disparage the folks that created that system. They were well-meaning, but just kind of made it not as it was originally intended. And that ties into our budgeting process. Yes, I truly believe we should fund education first, followed by public safety. Check my voting record, absolutely. We can make our budget process better, and that budget process will affect our economies, getting jobs going and getting our economy moving again.
Working in a bipartisan manner is something I've done. Another thing that I've done in my history is for the past 9 years, I've represented firefighters down in Olympia. And that firefighters are a little bit different breed in Olympia. A lot of times you see where an organization falls on one side of the aisle or the other. The fact of the matter is firefighters don't really fancy themselves as Democrats or Republicans. We're firefighters. In my work, I've been able to work with Republicans and Democrats, House and Senate. In order for things to happen in Olympia, you need to be prepared. You need to have intellectual curiosity about those that may not have, historically the same views as you. I'll bring that to Olympia. I'll be prepared. I will work hard, like I said, for the citizens of the 47th District. My name is Bud Sizemore. I'm challenging in the 47th District.
Thank you. At this time, this concludes our state debate luncheon. Thank you again to Skate America and all of the candidates for their willingness to serve our community.